When my husband looked at me across the boardroom table and said, "You're fired," it felt like someone had cut out 40 years of my life with one swing. Everyone froze. Even the air stopped moving. The woman sitting next to him, his secretary turned mistress, smiled proudly and placed her hand on his shoulder like she owned him, like she owned everything we had built together. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I only looked at him and thought, you have no idea what I'm about to do. That morning, I stood in the long hallway of Nextcore Technologies, the company I had helped to create from a one-bedroom apartment. The pale lights above flickered against the glass walls. My reflection looked older than I remembered. My hair was gray, my face lined with time, but my eyes, they were still sharp. I held the old laptop in my arms, the same one I used to build our first software. The guards waited for me to move. I turned toward the elevator, walking slowly, holding my head high. I would not let them see me break. Outside, Boston's October wind cut through my coat. I sat down on the cold stone steps, clutching that laptop. People walked past without noticing the woman who had just lost everything. They saw only age and failure. But inside me, something was burning. That old laptop, they thought it was junk. They didn't know it held the key to everything. In 10 minutes, the code I'd hidden inside would wake up. It wouldn't destroy the company. It would expose it. I looked up at the tall glass tower where my husband now sat with his new love. Maybe they were already celebrating my fall, laughing over coffee, planning their future. I smiled faintly. They had no idea that I'd already written the end of their story. The rain started to fall, light at first, then heavier. I didn't move. My thoughts drifted back to the start of everything to 1985 when I was young and full of fire. Thomas and I had nothing but a dream. We lived in a tiny apartment in Seattle with 2 plastic chairs and 1 old computer. I worked nights at a bookstore to pay rent, and in the evenings I wrote code on that slow, noisy machine. He was the talker, the dreamer, the man who could sell ice to an Eskimo. I was the quiet one who made the impossible work. We wanted to build a system that could stop cyber attacks before they even happened. Everyone said we were crazy. They laughed at the idea of predicting hacks. But Thomas would come home after every rejection, look at me and say, "Keep writing, Margaret. We'll make them see." And I did. I worked until my hands ached, until the sun rose and my eyes burned. The day our first prototype worked, Thomas hugged me like we had just discovered gold. "We did it," he whispered. I believed him when he said we. A few weeks later, we got married. It wasn't fancy. I wore a simple white dress, and we ate pizza in a tiny restaurant after signing the papers. He took my hand and said, "We're 50-50 in everything, forever." I thought it was a promise made of steel. We moved from the apartment to a small warehouse office. It had cracked walls, old pipes, and the smell of dust. But to us, it was a palace. I set up the computers and cables, and Thomas painted the logo on the wall himself. When we landed our first contract, a small insurance company, he danced in the middle of the room like a child. We hugged, laughed, and cried all at once. The years rolled on. Nextcore grew. We worked side by side, day and night. He handled investors and meetings. I handled the system, writing lines of code that protected hundreds of companies. When we reached our first $1 million deal, he kissed my forehead and said, "You made this happen." I thought, yes, we did. But as success grew, something between us began to change. It started small. During board meetings, I would explain a new program, and he would interrupt with a laugh. "Let me translate that for everyone," he'd say. The room would chuckle as if I'd spoken nonsense. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he wanted to help. But then it happened again and again. One morning, after a meeting, I told him quietly, "Thomas, please stop cutting me off. I can explain myself." He smiled and said, "Margaret, you're brilliant, but you're too detailed. People don't understand your tech talk. Let me handle it." That was the moment something cracked in me. I wasn't too detailed. I was the backbone of the company. But he made it sound like I was a child who needed help. Slowly, the balance shifted. Clients started to see him as the face of Nextcore and me as the quiet partner in the background. I didn't care about fame, but I wanted respect. Yet every time I tried to speak, Thomas found a way to take over. He started traveling more, conferences, investor meetings, endless dinners. At first, I believed it was all for work, but deep down, I could feel him slipping away. Then one day, Vanessa arrived. She came in with bright eyes and a confident smile. She was young, smart, and full of energy. I hired her myself. Her resume sparkled: top university, big companies, fluent communication. I thought she'd help Thomas with his meetings, make his job easier. I couldn't have known I was bringing a storm into my own house. From the first day, Vanessa charmed everyone. She brought pastries, remembered birthdays, even wrote thank you cards. She was kind to me too. "Mrs. Hill," she said, "you're my inspiration." I smiled and told her she'd do great things here. Within months, she was everywhere. She followed Thomas to meetings, traveled with him, stayed late for urgent projects. At first, I didn't think much of it. Then the nights grew longer. He started coming home past midnight, smelling of a sweet perfume I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, he snapped, "Don't start, Margaret. You're imagining things." That was the first time he called me unstable. The word cut deeper than any betrayal. The next few months were agony. I watched them from afar, Vanessa laughing too loud at his jokes, Thomas defending her ideas like they were divine. People began whispering. I told myself I was wrong, that he would never betray me. But one night, I found the proof. He came home late, tired, distracted. When he fell asleep, I opened his phone. His password was still my birthday. I told myself I just wanted peace of mind. Then I saw it, her message. "Tonight was perfect. Can't wait to see you again." Red heart, my hands trembled. My heart went numb. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen, reading it over and over until the words blurred. At that moment, I realized the man I built an empire with had chosen someone else. From that night on, I stopped being his wife. I became his shadow, quiet, invisible, but watching. I started saving everything: emails, payments, travel records. I saw how he used company money to fund trips with her. Hotels in Denver, Napa Valley, Portland, all labeled as client meetings. I copied every receipt, every hidden transaction. One day, a young IT engineer named Kenny came to my office. He looked nervous. "Mrs. Hill," he said, "you should see this." He handed me a USB. I opened it. It was security footage from the elevator. Thomas and Vanessa, laughing, kissing. That night, I didn't cry. I sat in the dark, watching the rain slide down the window. I whispered, "You'll regret this, Thomas." I knew then that revenge wasn't about rage. It was about patience. Over the next weeks, I worked quietly. I called it my insurance code, a secret system inside NextSquare software, small, hidden, invisible. No one would notice it. It didn't harm anything, but it made me the only person who truly controlled the core. Every password, every access key, they all passed through my creation. It was my proof, my shield, and my power. If they ever erased me, one command could show the world who built everything. And now they had erased me. As I sat on those cold stone steps outside the building, I looked down at my trembling hands. The laptop rested on my knees, the same one I used to write the code that made NextScore what it was. I opened the lid. The familiar blue light glowed on my face. My fingers moved slowly, typing a few commands I knew by heart. Protocol Omega activate. A small message appeared. Countdown started 10 minutes. I took a deep breath. Around me, the city moved as if nothing had changed. People hurried by, unaware that one woman sitting on the steps was about to shake $1 million empire. 9 minutes. I thought about the past, about that rainy Seattle apartment, about the promises we made. I thought about love turned to greed, partnership turned to betrayal. And as the rain kept falling, I whispered to myself, they fired me, but they forgot who wrote the code. The countdown ticked down to 8 minutes. I looked up at the shining NextScore tower and smiled through the rain. They think I'm gone. But they're about to find out I'm still inside every single line of their system. The laptop screen glowed faintly under the gray sky. Rain splashed against the keyboard, but I didn't move. My heart was beating fast, not from fear, but from something colder, calm purpose. I had waited years for justice, and now it was coming quietly, like the storm that creeps in before anyone notices. Inside that building, people were still sipping coffee, typing, and talking. Thomas probably had his arm around Vanessa, pretending to comfort her about something trivial. They had no idea what was about to happen. 9 floors above me, the first warning alert blinked on a security monitor. I could picture the young IT engineer frowning, tapping his keyboard, wondering why the main server was lagging. He'd think it was just a glitch, but within minutes, those small red dots would multiply until they filled the entire map. I took a sip of my cold coffee, my eyes locked on the glass tower. "You wanted me out," I whispered, "but you forgot I built the walls." 7 minutes. I leaned back on the step, feeling the drizzle soak into my coat. My phone buzzed once, an alert from the internal system I still had hidden access to. The security layer was activating, just as I had programmed. Every few seconds, it checked for my encryption key. Without it, the system would slowly lock itself down. I could almost hear Thomas's voice from years ago, back when we were still partners. "You're the best coder in the world, Margaret. With you by my side, no one can touch us." He had been right about one thing. No one could touch us until he did. Now he would learn what it meant to betray the woman who built his empire. I took a deep breath. Each inhale carried memories of the past, of cold nights in that little apartment, of my young hands typing code, of promises whispered in candlelight. Those memories didn't hurt anymore. They only made me stronger. 5 minutes. Through the glass, I saw movement. Someone was running in the hallway. Then another. The screens inside must have started to flicker. The systems were slowing down, freezing. A young man near the window looked confused, his headset slipping off as he called out to someone. Then came the first real panic. I knew it because I saw it in the reflection, a sudden wave of motion, people standing, hands waving, voices shouting. I could almost hear it even from the street. What's going on? Why are the servers down? Who changed the admin key? My lips curved into a faint smile. "The admin key, Thomas," I murmured. "You should have remembered who wrote it." Inside the boardroom, I imagined Vanessa leaning over the table, her perfect smile gone, her eyes darting between the screens, her voice trembling. She tried to stay calm, but she'd feel it, the fear that something much bigger than her was moving underneath. 3 minutes. The rain grew heavier. I pulled my coat tighter, my eyes still fixed on the building. A memory flashed. Thomas standing on stage during a tech conference, calling me the silent partner in front of hundreds of investors. The crowd laughed. I smiled then because I was too proud to show the pain. Now I whispered, "You silenced me once, but the silence is over." Suddenly, my phone buzzed again, faster this time. Protocol Omega active. Systems unresponsive. The alert I built myself. It was working perfectly. NextScore's entire infrastructure was freezing one layer at a time. The customer database, the firewall, the client portals, all slowly turning to ice. 2 minutes. I pictured Thomas standing, shouting into his phone, calling the IT team. He'd demand answers. He'd look at Vanessa, panic rising in his eyes. And for the first time, he'd feel what I had felt the day he threw me out, powerless. Then it happened. 1 minute left. The city around me buzzed with life, but inside NextScore, everything stopped. The screens went black. The company's heart stopped beating. And then came the ripple, the part I didn't plan for but expected. Hackers. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, watching NextScore's open ports, waiting for any weakness. They saw the silence as an opportunity. They rushed in like wolves through an open gate. I didn't want chaos. I didn't want destruction. But Thomas's arrogance had left no protection without me. Within seconds, thousands of attack requests slammed into NextScore's servers. The system groaned under the weight. The great fortress of cybersecurity, the company that promised to keep others safe, was now helpless. I stood up slowly, my knees aching from the cold stone, and whispered, "You built your empire on my back, Thomas. Now you'll watch it fall without me. From across the street, I could see them through the windows, people running, phones ringing, alarms flashing. Thomas must have realized it now. The truth. That I was still inside his system. That every success he ever bragged about came from me. I imagined him gripping the edge of the table, sweat on his forehead, shouting at the IT team, "Fix it, now!" But there would be no fixing. Not without me. I walked slowly to the nearby cafe, shaking the water from my coat. I ordered tea and sat by the window, facing the next-door tower. Behind the glass, chaos was spreading. The red lights blinked faster on every floor. My phone buzzed again, alerts from financial networks. NextScore's client servers were disconnected. Banks, firms, hospitals, all demanding answers. The stock price began to drop. 1%. 5. 15. Every second, another wave. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. This wasn't joy, it was justice. 40 years of sacrifice erased with one sentence. Now, balance was being restored. As the tea steamed in front of me, I thought of my younger self, the girl with messy hair and big dreams who once believed in love and partnership. She was gone, but she had left me something stronger, resolve. I pulled out my phone and opened the secure log. Each alert appeared like a heartbeat. I knew exactly how far the collapse had gone. When the first media notification popped up, I didn't even flinch. Breaking news, NextScore systems hit by massive security failure. The people in the cafe gasped. Someone said, "Isn't that the cybersecurity company?" Another whispered, "How could they get hacked?" I stirred my tea slowly and said nothing. By the time the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, NextScore's stock had fallen by half. The same investors who once praised Thomas were now calling for his resignation. Clients were pulling contracts. The board was in shambles. I walked outside again. The rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet concrete and burnt coffee. The streets around the tower were buzzing with reporters. News vans parked along the curb. Cameras pointed up at the building. From where I stood, I could see Vanessa at the window, her phone pressed to her ear, her face pale, her perfect world cracking. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. The next morning, the news spread everywhere. NextScore collapse. Data breach. CEO under investigation. On television, Thomas looked nothing like the proud man I once knew. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow, his voice breaking as he read a statement. We are working around the clock to restore our systems, but everyone could see it. The mask was gone. The king had fallen. I turned off the TV and stared at the reflection in the black screen. A tired old woman with steel in her eyes. I whispered, "You took everything from me, Thomas, but you couldn't take my mind." 2 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Margaret Hill." "Yes. This is Special Agent Collins, Federal Cybercrime Division. We'd like to ask you some questions regarding NextScore's internal systems." My stomach clenched. I had expected this. They wanted to know if I was involved. I said calmly, "Of course. I'll cooperate fully." When I arrived at the federal office, they treated me politely but cautiously. The agent looked up from his files. "You were one of the founders?" "Yes," I said. He nodded slowly. "We reviewed your access logs. Everything traces back to a series of legacy codes, ones only you could have written." I looked him in the eye and said softly, "Those codes were written to protect, not to destroy, but someone destroyed the trust behind them." He leaned back. "Mrs. Hill, we believe you." That was all I needed to hear. When I walked out of the building, the air felt lighter. NextScore's collapse wasn't my shame. It was their punishment. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end. There was still unfinished business. There was the truth buried under lies. The woman Thomas replaced me with had vanished from the news, but I knew she wasn't gone. People like Vanessa don't disappear. They hide and wait. And Thomas, he wouldn't stop trying to rebuild. He was too proud, too blind to realize the empire was already gone. I wasn't going to wait for him to come crawling back. This time, I would write the ending myself. That evening, I sat in a small cafe near Boston Harbor, watching the light shimmer on the water. I opened my laptop, my real one, not the old machine they'd thrown at me, and typed the name Secure Shield Solutions. It was the new company I'd been quietly planning for months, long before my firing, a name that symbolized protection built on honesty, not greed. I smiled faintly as I wrote the tagline, not power, not money, trust. The first message popped up within hours. Mrs. Hill, I heard about NextScore. I've always admired your work. If you're starting something new, I'd like to invest. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed back, let's talk. Sometimes the universe takes everything from you just to show you what you were capable of all along. Days turned into weeks. NextScore's empire crumbled further. Thomas was forced to step down. Vanessa's name vanished from all company records. The press called it the fall of the founders. But to me, it was justice. Every night, I sat by my window, coding again. My hands moved slower than before, but my heart was steady. I wasn't doing it for revenge anymore. I was doing it to rebuild something pure, something mine. And each time the news mentioned NextScore's failure, I smiled softly and whispered, that's what betrayal costs. Yet one evening, as I packed my files, a knock came at my door. Soft at first, then louder. I opened it and froze. There stood Thomas, older, thinner, exhausted. His eyes red, his hands trembling. He looked like a man who had lost everything. Margaret, he said quietly, please, just 5 minutes. The air between us was heavy. The sound of the harbor waves echoed behind him. I crossed my arms. You have 5 minutes, I said coldly. He looked down, fumbling with some papers. His voice cracked. The company's dying. Investors are gone. Clients have left. I can't save it. Only you can. I stared at him, silent. He lifted his eyes to mine. For a moment, I saw the man I once loved, the one who promised me equality and partnership. But that man had died long ago. You need me again? I asked softly. He nodded. Please, Margaret, help me fix this. I shook my head slowly. You didn't just fire me, Thomas. You erased me. You made the world believe I was nothing. His lips trembled. I know. And I was wrong. I was blind. I'll give you back your shares, your title, everything. Just, please, come back. The words hung in the air. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old pain. Then I straightened my shoulders. All right, I said finally, but on one condition. He looked up quickly. Anything. I took a step forward, my eyes steady. You'll sign it all to me. NextScore will be mine. Every document, every credit, every patent. You'll admit publicly that I built it. He froze. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came. I could see the pride dying in his eyes. Slowly he nodded. If that's what it takes. I closed the door behind him after he left, my heart pounding. Outside, the storm had stopped. Inside me, a different kind of storm was just beginning. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. And I knew one thing for sure. Thomas Hill had no idea the full plan I had in motion. Because the next time I walked through those NextScore doors, it wouldn't be as the woman he fired. It would be as the woman who owned him. Tomorrow, I take back everything they stole, one keystroke at a time. That night, sleep didn't come. I sat by the window of my small apartment, watching the city lights shimmer across the Boston skyline. Each light reminded me of the servers I once built, the systems I once protected. My fingers itched to type, to fix, to create again. On the table beside me were the papers Thomas had left earlier, legal documents offering me back my shares, my position, and full control of engineering. I had read them twice. Every line was soaked in desperation. I knew he wasn't doing it out of love. He was doing it out of fear. When the sun began to rise, painting the harbor in shades of pale gold, I stood up and stretched. My bones ached, but my heart felt alive. For the first time in years, I felt like I was walking towards something I deserved. I made myself a cup of black coffee, bitter and strong, the way I liked it when I coded late into the night. Then I opened my laptop and reviewed the system reports. NextScore was still falling apart. Thousands of clients gone. Half the servers still locked under security keys only I could open. Thomas had thought firing me would make me disappear. Instead, it made me untouchable. By 10 a.m., I arrived at NextScore headquarters, the same glass building that had thrown me out weeks ago. The same doors that once closed behind me with the sound of finality. Now they opened with a quiet hiss as the guard scanned my new ID badge. "Welcome back, Mrs. Hill," he said softly, avoiding my eyes. I smiled faintly. "Thank you." The air inside felt colder. The lobby that used to buzz with voices was half empty now. Most of the employees had left after the collapse. Only a few stayed, the ones who still believed in me. When I stepped into the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My gray hair was tied neatly, my suit pressed. I didn't look like the woman who had been humiliated. I looked like someone ready to rebuild. The elevator doors opened onto the 15th floor, the same floor where Thomas had fired me. He was waiting near the conference room, his face pale, eyes tired. I could see the fear behind his forced smile. "Margaret," he said quietly, "you came." He saved my bay down. I said I would. Inside, the long oak table looked the same as it did the day they kicked me out, but the faces were different. Only 12 employees remained, people who had chosen to stay when everyone else fled. Sarah, one of my oldest engineers, stood and smiled faintly. "We knew you'd come back." I looked around the room. "You stayed because you believed in the code, not the name on the door. That's something worth rebuilding." Thomas sat down at the end of the table. "We need to move fast," he said. "The clients want results. The investors want updates. We have less than 2 weeks before everything gets shut down." I met his eyes. "Then we'd better get to work." I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the projector. The screen flickered to life, showing the full system map of NextScore, the layers of code, the backdoors, the weaknesses that had been ignored. "This," I said, pointing at the red zones, "is what you left unguarded when you pushed me out. These vulnerabilities are your fault. But now, we fixed them. One at a time." The team leaned forward, listening carefully. I explained the plan in simple steps. No corporate fluff, no boardroom talk, just pure engineering. Each person was assigned a role. Sarah handled data recovery. Kenny, the young IT engineer, who once warned me about the hidden footage, would manage the firewall patches. I would lead the architecture, rebuild myself. Thomas sat quietly in the corner, scribbling notes he didn't understand. The same man who once mocked my explanations now couldn't even follow them. For the first few days, I barely slept. We worked from dawn till midnight, eating pizza at our desks, sharing stories from the old days. The office felt alive again, not because of money, but because of purpose. Whenever the younger employees struggled, I reminded them, perfection doesn't come from comfort. It comes from persistence. They'd nod, smile, and keep typing. By the end of the first week, we had restored 40% of NextScore's functionality. Clients started calling again, carefully, hesitantly. The first to return was Pacific Financial, an old partner from our early years. The email came late at night. "If Margaret Hill is leading the rebuild, we're ready to renew our contract." I read the message twice, my eyes stinging. It wasn't just business. It was validation. Proof that integrity still mattered. Thomas found out the next morning and nearly cried. "You did it, Margaret," he said. I didn't look up from my laptop. "No, we did it. But remember, it only works because I'm back." He nodded quietly. He knew the truth. Days turned into nights. The building, once silent, began to hum again. New energy flowed through the team. Still, I never let my guard down. I knew Thomas too well. A man like him doesn't give up power easily. He might have signed the papers, but in his mind, NextScore was still his. One evening, as I walked past his office, I saw him talking on the phone in hushed tones. His back was turned, his voice low but urgent. Yes, he said. She's rebuilding it. Faster than we expected. Once the system is stable, we'll push her out again. No one will stop us this time. I froze. My heart didn't break this time. It hardened. So that's how it was going to be. That night, I stayed late. The rest of the team had gone home. The office was dark except for the glow of my screen. I opened the system's core files and began to work on something new. Not revenge, protection. A new security layer, hidden deep within the system, something even Thomas couldn't find. It would ensure that if anyone tried to remove me again, the system would lock down permanently. No one would be able to use it without my approval. I named it Athena, after the goddess of wisdom and war. By dawn, it was complete. I leaned back, exhausted, and whispered, "Let's see you try, Thomas." The next morning, I arrived early and found him waiting near my desk. He smiled too brightly. "Morning, Margaret. I brought coffee." I glanced at the cup. "That's new." He chuckled awkwardly. "You've been working too hard." I thought I'd help. I took the cup but didn't drink it. "I don't need help. I need honesty." His smile faded. "What do you mean?" I looked him straight in the eye. "You're planning to remove me again. Don't lie." His face went pale. "Who told you that?" "I don't need anyone to tell me. I heard it myself." He rubbed his forehead, sighing. "Margaret, you don't understand. The investors want control. They think the company needs new leadership." I shook my head. "The company doesn't need new leadership. It needs integrity." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said softly, "If you try to betray me again, Thomas, I promise you, it will be the last time." He didn't answer, just looked at me with guilt and fear tangled in his eyes. Then he turned and walked away. After that day, he avoided me. I didn't mind. I had work to do. Over the next few weeks, NextScore systems fully stabilized. The security dashboard glowed green for the first time in months. Clients returned. Revenue rose. The board, once ready to shut us down, now sent letters of praise. The media caught on. The comeback of NextScore, the woman behind the code returns. They called it the Margaret effect. When I saw the headline, I smiled faintly. "About time," I murmured. We held a press conference to announce NextScore's recovery. Cameras flashed. Reporters crowded the room. Thomas tried to stand beside me on stage, but I stopped him with a glance. "Not this time," I said quietly. He stepped back. I took the microphone and looked at the sea of faces in front of me. My voice was calm but strong. 40 years ago, NextScore started with 2 people and 1 old computer. We built it with hard work and trust. That trust was broken, but trust can be rebuilt one honest act at a time. The room was silent. Then applause filled the air. That night, the story spread across every major outlet. People called me the Iron Matriarch of Tech. I didn't care for the nickname, but I understood its meaning. I had become something unshakable. But behind the applause, I sensed something darker brewing. Thomas's pride couldn't handle it. Every article praised me. Every investor called me. He was fading into the background and his resentment was growing. One night, I found him in his office, staring at a glass of whiskey. The bottle was half empty. "You should go home," I said gently. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "I should have never underestimated you." I tilted my head. "You did. And that's why we're here." He laughed bitterly. "You think you've won, don't you?" "I didn't win," I said quietly. "I survived." He stood suddenly, slamming his glass down. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." I didn't flinch. "You humiliated yourself the day you traded loyalty for vanity." His hand shook. "You destroyed me, Margaret." I stepped closer. "No, Thomas. You destroyed us." We stared at each other for a long moment. The air felt heavy. I could see the man I once loved buried somewhere deep inside the wreck of pride and guilt. Then I turned away. "Go home, Thomas." There's nothing left to fight for. He didn't stop me. A week later, he disappeared. He didn't show up for work, didn't answer calls. I thought maybe he had left the city. Maybe he was finally letting go. But part of me knew better. Men like Thomas don't walk away quietly. That evening, I received an anonymous email. No sender, no signature. Just one line. Athena won't protect you forever. I froze. Only one person could know about Athena. Thomas. Panic flickered for a second, but then I steadied myself. I checked the logs. No breaches. No unusual activity. Everything was fine, for now. Still, I knew what that message meant. He was planning something. And if he thought he could use my own code against me, he was wrong. I tightened my grip on the mouse, whispering, "Let the games begin." For the next few days, strange things began happening inside NextScore. Minor bugs appeared, errors that didn't belong. At first, they seemed random, but I recognized the patterns. It was his work. Clumsy, but dangerous. He was trying to plant a virus inside the system. One night, as I sat in my office tracing the code, I realized he was closer than I thought. He wasn't hacking from outside. He was inside the building. I looked up, heart pounding. The office was empty, dark except for the flicker of my monitor. Then faintly I heard footsteps. Slow, careful. Coming from the hallway. I turned off the lights and stood still, listening. The sound moved closer. Then a shadow crossed the glass wall. "Thomas," I said quietly, "I know it's you." No answer. Just silence. Then the door creaked open, and there he was, disheveled, eyes wild, holding a flash drive. "Don't do this," I said softly. "It's over." He shook his head, his voice trembling. "It's never over until I win." "You already lost," I whispered. He stepped closer, his hand shaking as he plugged the drive into the nearest terminal. "You think you're untouchable, Margaret? Let's see what happens when your precious system crashes for good." I moved fast. I grabbed the laptop on the desk and began typing. My fingers flew across the keys, racing against him. Lines of code filled the screen. "Stop!" I shouted. "You don't know what you're doing." He laughed bitterly. "I know exactly what I'm doing." For a moment, the lights flickered. The servers hummed loudly. Then I saw it, his code infecting the system like poison. But Athena was already awake. The system detected the intrusion, isolated it, and locked him out instantly. His screen went black. Thomas froze. "What did you—" I stood slowly. "You forgot, Thomas. I don't just build systems. I build defenses." He looked at me, his expression collapsing into despair. "So this is it? You win?" I shook my head. "No, I just stopped losing." He sank into the chair, hands covering his face. The silence between us felt final this time. I took the flash drive, ejected it carefully, and placed it on the desk. "Walk away, Thomas, before there's nothing left of you." I turned to leave, my heels clicking softly on the floor. Behind me, his voice broke. "I loved you once." I paused for a second, then said without turning, "I know. But love without respect is just another form of control." Then I walked out, not looking back. Outside, the rain had started again, soft, steady, cleansing. I looked up at the NextScore tower glowing against the night sky and whispered, "It's over." But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Because power like this never stays quiet for long. And somewhere, I could feel it. Someone else was watching, waiting for the next move. "Mrs. Hill, we need to talk." "You're not the only one who built NextScore's code." I stared at the message for a long time. The rain outside pressed softly against the glass, making the city lights blur like watercolor. For a moment, I thought it was a prank. Another desperate attempt from Thomas or one of his old allies trying to shake me. But then the next line appeared on my screen. "Check your legacy folder. File nx_archive_1986.zip. Password, you already know it." My heart froze. That folder hadn't existed on any open system for decades. It was from our earliest days, the prototype years in Seattle. The one I kept locked away, offline, in a hidden drive. How could anyone else know about it? I whispered to myself, that's impossible. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed the old password, the one I hadn't used since 1986. Coffee code 1985. The file opened. Inside was a single text document. And when I opened it, my stomach twisted. Lines of my original code filled the screen, but at the bottom was something I didn't write. A signature. Created by M-H-and-E-R. I scrolled up and down. My hands trembled. I knew every line of this code like my own heartbeat. I wrote it. Alone. There had never been an ER. So who was this? And how had their initials been stitched into my earliest work? The next morning, I called Kenny, the young engineer who'd stayed loyal to me. Kenny, I need you to trace a digital signature, I said quietly. Something buried deep in the old NextCore archives. He frowned. Sure, Mrs. Hill. Should I bring my system over? No, I replied. Do it from your secure laptop only, not on the company servers. This stays between us. By noon, he came to my office, a nervous look on his face. I found something strange, he said. Whoever ER is, they accessed this archive last week, remotely. The request came from a government subnet. I blinked. Government? He nodded. Looks like Department of Defense. But the access was masked. Whoever did it knew exactly how to hide their trail. I leaned back slowly, my chest tightening. A new player had entered the game, and they were far more powerful than Thomas. That night, I sat alone in my office, the city dark outside, the hum of the server surrounding me like ghosts whispering secrets. If the Department of Defense had touched my code, it meant only one thing. NextCore system had been used for more than private security. It had been weaponized. And suddenly, a horrifying thought hit me. Could Thomas have sold our technology to the government behind my back? I opened the hidden financial records I'd recovered earlier, the ones from the Delaware shell company he and Aunt Vanessa had created. As I scrolled, I noticed a series of payments I'd ignored before, each listed under a vague name, Project Halcyon, and next to it, a buyer code that matched federal defense contracts. I whispered, oh my God, he hadn't just betrayed me. He'd sold our creation to people who could use it for warfare. The next day, I called my old lawyer, Mr. Peterson. His voice cracked with surprise when he heard my name. Margaret, I saw the news. I can't believe what they've done to you. How are you holding up? I've seen worse, I said flatly. But I need your help again. I think Thomas sold our software to the government under a secret deal. He went silent for a long moment. That's a serious claim. I have proof, I said. I just don't understand what they're doing with it. Send me what you have. But Margaret, he said softly, if the federal government's involved, tread carefully. People disappear over less. His words sent a chill through me. But fear wasn't something I could afford anymore. By the end of the week, strange things began happening. My office computer restarted itself twice during the night. Files I hadn't opened in years suddenly appeared as recently accessed. Even my phone began to glitch. Someone was watching me. Late one evening, as I was leaving the building, I noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Two men sat inside, not moving. When I stepped outside, the driver turned off the headlights but didn't drive away. I went back in, locked the doors, and took the back exit. That was the night I realized this wasn't just corporate betrayal anymore. It was something far deeper and far more dangerous. I didn't sleep. Instead, I spent hours reviewing the old NextCore framework, the one that had once protected banks and hospitals. Hidden inside it, I found a small, encrypted subroutine, something that didn't belong to me. When I decrypted it, a message appeared. Halcyon is live. Phase 2 in progress. Maintain blackout until execution. The timestamp was 6 months old. Right around the time Thomas began ignoring me, my chest tightened. Phase 2? Execution? What were they planning? At that moment, my phone buzzed again. Another message, same unknown number as before. You built something extraordinary, Margaret, but you have no idea what it's become. Meet me at Pier 19. Tomorrow, midnight. I stared at the screen. Every instinct told me it was a trap. But the other part of me, the part that had spent 40 years chin truth, couldn't walk away. At midnight, I found myself standing at the edge of Pier 19. The harbor was silent, the wind cold. The lights of the city flickered in the distance. Then I saw him. A man in a dark coat standing near the railing, his face half hidden under a hood. "Mrs. Hill," he said, his voice calm. "I'm Agent Reed, Department of Defense." My heart pounded. "So you're the one who's been contacting me?" He nodded. "You're in danger. The system you built, NextCore's foundation, is being used for cyber weapons development under Project Halcyon. Your husband sold it to us 10 years ago." My knees went weak. 10 years? He nodded again. "You didn't know because he hid the secondary framework inside the public version. It's capable of targeting infrastructure, power grids, satellites, even defense networks. Your insurance code, Athena, protected the commercial version, but Halcyon runs deeper. And now, it's unstable." I grabbed the railing, my voice trembling. "Unstable how?" He looked at me sharply. "If it collapses, it could trigger a chain reaction across every network it's connected to. That's thousands of systems, possibly millions. We need your help to stop it." It felt dizzy. My code, the code I wrote out of love, patience, and faith, was being used as a weapon. I closed my eyes, whispering, "What have we done?" Reed placed a small flash drive in my hand. "Everything you need is on this. But be careful. Someone else is already trying to reach Halcyon before we do. If they succeed, no one will control it, not even us." He turned to leave. "Wait!" I shouted. "Who's trying to access it?" He looked back, his expression dark. "Someone inside NextCore. A ghost from your past." Before I could say another word, he disappeared into the fog. I returned to my apartment, my mind racing. I plugged in the flash drive. Files opened automatically, blueprints, network maps, secret contracts, even classified military reports. Every one of them had the same line of code embedded deep inside, my code. It was surreal. The program I built in a Seattle apartment running through government systems across the world, and now something was trying to control it. I opened the security log on the drive. At the very bottom, one name appeared repeatedly in the access history: Vanessa. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It couldn't be her. Vanessa was gone. She'd vanished after the NextCore collapse, deleted all her accounts, fled the country. But there it was. Her name, logged 5 times over the past month. Each access coming from a private satellite network based in Luxembourg. The woman who destroyed my marriage had resurfaced, and she was now playing with a weapon that could collapse global systems. I whispered, "Oh, Vanessa, what have you done?" The next few days blurred together. I barely ate or slept. I worked nonstop, tracking the signals, tracing her movements through encrypted tunnels and VPNs. She was good, better than I expected, but not as good as me. Finally, I found her access point, a data hub in Zurich, disguised as a financial firm. It was running Halcyon's secondary core. She had control. And if she activated it, entire systems could fall, financial institutions, transport networks, even national defense. I realized something chilling. Vanessa didn't just want money. She wanted revenge. That night, I called Thomas. He answered after 3 rings, his voice quiet, defeated. "What do you want, Margaret?" "I need to see you. Now." He sighed. "It's late." "This isn't about us," I said sharply. "It's about Halcyon." Silence. Then a whisper. "You know." "Yes. And I know Vanessa's involved." He cursed under his breath. "I never meant for it to go this far. She made promises, said she'd handle the expansion. I thought it was harmless." Harmless, I snapped. You sold the heart of our creation to people who turned it into a weapon. He didn't reply. I took a breath. Thomas, listen to me. She's hijacked the system. If we don't stop her now, Halcyon could take everything down. The entire grid. He finally said, "What do you need me to do?" That was the first time in years I heard genuine fear in his voice. I told him everything about Agent Reed, the flash drive, the code, Vanessa's reappearance. By morning, we met in my office. For the first time, he looked like a man stripped of all pride. No suit, no charm, just regret. I never wanted this, he said softly. I ignored the emotion. We can't undo the past, Thomas, but we can fix this. Together, we connected to NextCore's backup server. I designed a manual override system years ago, something no one knew existed except me. We worked silently for hours, tracing Vanessa's control path through Zurich's data network. Each trace brought us closer to her access point. Then suddenly, my screen froze. A new message appeared in red letters. You can't stop what's already begun. Vanessa. Is she in the system now? Thomas asked, panic rising in his voice. I nodded slowly. Yes, and she's watching us. The lights in the office flickered. The servers hummed louder. Lines of code started flashing across my monitor. Vanessa was trying to override Athena, the one system she never had access to. She's breaking in, I whispered. We don't have much time. Thomas leaned closer. Can you block her? I shook my head. Not block. Outthink. I started typing, my fingers flying faster than they had in years. Every second counted. Vanessa's attack came like waves, encryption bursts, false trails, and decoy scripts. She was throwing everything she had. Thomas stood behind me, watching in silence as I rewrote entire blocks of code in real time. My eyes burned, my hands cramped, but I didn't stop. Then suddenly, a flicker. A single line of her command code appeared in the corner of the screen. I recognized the structure immediately. She had copied my original security syntax, the same one I'd written 40 years ago. She'd learned from me? That realization hit me like lightning. If she learned from me, she also inherited my weaknesses, and that meant I knew exactly how to beat her. I isolated her entry point and built a loop, a code trap that mirrored her every move but reversed the effect. Whatever she sent in, it bounced back stronger. Within seconds, her system began to lag. Then the messages started flooding in. Stop this, Margaret. You don't understand. It's too late. I typed back one line. It's never too late when justice writes the code. Then I hit enter. The servers roared. The screens flashed white. Vanessa's signal dropped. The system stabilized. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then slowly, the Athena network glowed green again. I leaned back, breathing hard. It's over. Thomas sat beside me, burying his face in his hands. What happens now? I looked at the screen, where Vanessa's final message blinked faintly. You may have stopped me, but you can't stop Halcyon. It's already in motion. The words echoed in my head. I turned to Thomas. She's lying, right? But deep down, I knew she wasn't. Whatever Vanessa had triggered wasn't just a system breach, it was an activation. Something far beyond our control had already begun. Oh my God, I whispered. It's not over. It's only beginning. The office lights flickered again. The humming of the servers turned low and steady, like the sound of a heartbeat counting down. On every screen in the room, the same message flashed over and over. Thomas stood frozen beside me. His lips moved, but no words came out. The color had drained from his face. Margaret, he said finally, voice cracking. What does that mean? I didn't answer right away. I knew exactly what it meant. The system was preparing to activate globally, spreading its network to every link node, every server, every satellite it could reach. Once it started, there would be no off switch. I took a deep breath. It means the world is about to see what we built, and if we don't stop it, they'll never forget it. Thomas looked at me, horror written all over his face. You can't shut it down? I can, I said softly, but not alone. For a moment, silence filled the room. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, and the rain beat harder against the glass. Boston looked distant through the storm, a city of lights about to lose its power. I grabbed my laptop bag. We can't do this here. If Halcyon's code is active, NextCore's system isn't safe anymore. Thomas nodded shakily. Where do we go? To the only place that still runs the original hardware, I said. The old Seattle lab. His eyes widened. That place hasn't been touched in 20 years. Exactly, I said. Which means no one can find us there. We left that night. The airport was nearly empty, the sky outside flashing with lightning. As I sat by the window waiting for our flight, I couldn't stop thinking about how it had all come full circle, back to the place where it began. Back to the room where a younger version of me sat cross-legged on the floor, eating instant noodles, typing the first lines of NextCore's code. Thomas sat beside me quietly. His once smooth hands now shook as he held his coffee. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, Margaret, if we don't make it. I turned to him. Don't say that. He swallowed hard. Then just know. I'm sorry. For all of it. I looked at him for a moment, really looked. The man who had once promised partnership and love. The man who had betrayed both. I know you are, I said quietly, but sorry won't stop what's coming. The flight landed in Seattle just before dawn. The city was gray and misty, the streets wet from rain. As we drove through the familiar neighborhoods, I felt a strange mix of nostalgia and dread. When we reached the old NextCore lab, the building looked the same, small, plain, hidden behind rows of warehouses. The windows were fogged, the paint peeling. But when I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the smell of dust and old machines hit me like a memory. This is where it all started, Thomas said softly, brushing his fingers over an old server rack. I nodded. And maybe where it ends. We powered up the main system. The old lights blinked weakly to life. The machines groaned, as if waking from a deep sleep. I plugged in my laptop and began connecting to the network. Halcyon's code was everywhere, spreading faster than I'd seen any system spread before. It already reached Asia, Europe, and part to the US infrastructure. If we didn't stop it within 72 hours, it would become self-replicating, uncontrollable. Thomas paced behind me, his hands shaking. Can't we just cut the power? I shook my head. It's running through satellite nodes now. Even if we shut this building down, it'll keep going from space. We have to disable the root code. He frowned. The root code? The one embedded in the prototype version, the one only I know how to access. For the first time, a flicker of hope crossed his face. Then we still have a chance. I sighed. Maybe. But if I trigger the failsafe, it could erase everything. NextCore, Athena, even my own system backups. There won't be anything left. He looked at me for a long moment. Then do it. I stared at him. You'd really let it all go? Your empire, your name, everything? He gave a bitter laugh. What name? The world already hates me. You're the only one they respect now. You're the one they remember. I turned back to the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then we ended. Together. We began the process. I opened Athena's interface, the system I had built to protect my code, and linked it to Halcyon's global network. The two systems stared at each other like enemies about to fight. Athena pulsed green. Halcyon glowed red. When I initiated the merge, the screens filled with cascading lines of text. The system roared. Electricity crackled through the air. The room vibrated. Thomas gripped the table. Is that supposed to happen? I didn't answer. I was too focused. My hands flew across the keys, rewriting the connections faster than the program could replicate. Then, suddenly, a message appeared. My stomach dropped. She's still in the system, I whispered. Thomas leaned closer. Vanessa? Yes. She must have created a shadow link before we shut her out. A new message popped up, flashing across every screen. You can't stop it, Margaret. Halcyon isn't yours anymore. My jaw clenched. We'll see about that. I typed command after command, cutting her out layer by layer. But every time I shut one door, she opened another. It was like fighting my own reflection. She knew my methods, my style, my weaknesses. And then, suddenly, her voice filled the room. Not through the speakers, but through a hidden voice channel embedded in the code itself. "Hello, Margaret," she said smoothly. "Miss me?" I froze. "Vanessa." "You should thank me," she said. "Without me, NextScore would still be a small company. I gave it power. You gave it life. Together, we made history." "You destroyed everything," I said coldly. She laughed. "No, I evolved it. You think small, Margaret. But Halcyon isn't a virus. It's evolution. A world where systems fix themselves. No more human errors. No more weakness." "You mean no more control?" I said. She paused. "Exactly. You and Thomas built a cage. I built freedom." "Freedom?" I snapped. "You call wiping out global networks freedom? You'll cause chaos. Hospitals, transport, food, communication, all gone." Her voice lowered. "Sometimes chaos is necessary for rebirth." Thomas stepped forward, shouting at the microphone. "Vanessa, listen to me. You don't know what you're doing." She laughed again. "Oh, Thomas, always the face, never the mind. Do you even understand your own company's code?" He went pale. "Please, stop this. We can help you." Her tone turned sharp. "Help me? You betrayed me. You fired me the moment things got hard. You deserve to watch everything burn." The connection crackled. I could almost hear the anger in her breath. Then suddenly, the screen filled with red text. Thomas shouted. She sped it up. I stood still for a second, then whispered, "She's forcing the launch." We had only one day left. I turned to Thomas. "You have to leave." He shook his head. "No, not this time. You'll only slow me down." I said, "No, Margaret. I started this with you. I'll end it with you." I looked at him, searching for deceit, but there was none. Just exhaustion and guilt. I nodded once. "Then sit down and do exactly as I say. For the next 12 hours, we work nonstop. No breaks, no food, just coffee and code." The old servers buzzed, filling the room with heat and noise. Sweat rolled down my back. My fingers were stiff, my eyes burning. We built a counter program, a sequence designed to intercept Halcyon's launch signal and reverse its code cascade. If we failed, the system would consume itself and take half the global internet with it. If we succeeded, it would erase every trace of NextScore forever. At 3:15 a.m., I finally leaned back. "It's ready." Thomas looked at me. "What happens when you hit execute?" I smiled weakly. "We save the world and lose everything." The final countdown began. 24 hours became 2, then 1, then 30 minutes. The system trembled as Vanessa fought back, sending more counterattacks, each one stronger than the last. The screens flickered red and green, like a heartbeat caught between life and death. Thomas slammed his fist on the table. "She's too strong." "No," I said through gritted teeth. "She's desperate." Then, with 10 minutes left, Vanessa's voice returned. "You can't stop destiny, Margaret. You're just delaying the inevitable." I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. Maybe, but some things are worth delaying. Then I hit enter. For a moment, everything stopped. No sound, no light, just silence. Then the system erupted. The screens filled with light. The room shook. Sparks flew from the servers. The power surged through the walls. I shielded my face as the monitors exploded one by one. And then darkness. Complete heavy silence. I opened my eyes slowly. The screens were dead. The air smelled of burnt metal. Thomas lay slumped against the table, coughing. Did it work? I looked at the main monitor. A single message glowed faintly on the black screen. I smiled weakly. It's over. He laughed, a broken, tired laugh. You did it. No, I said softly. We did. Outside, the storm had ended. The first light of dawn crept through the broken windows, painting the room in gold. I stood up, my body trembling from exhaustion. The hum of the machines was gone. Silence felt final. Thomas sat quietly, staring at the floor. 40 years, he whispered. It's all gone. I nodded. Yes, but maybe that's what it needed. To end where it began. He turned to me, tears in his eyes. Margaret, what will you do now? I smiled faintly. Start again, but smaller this time. Simpler. Something that belongs only to me. He looked down. You'll succeed. You'll always do. I reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. Goodbye, Thomas. He didn't try to stop me. Outside the lab, the air was fresh. Birds sang faintly in the distance. For the first time in years, the world felt quiet. I walked to the edge of the harbor and watched the sunrise break across the water. In my hand, I held the last flash drive, the only surviving copy of my original code. For a long time, I stared at it. That little piece of metal held 40 years of my life, every late night, every tear, every dream. Then I tossed it into the sea. It disappeared beneath the waves with a soft splash. And with it, the last chain that bound me to NextCore sank out of sight. Weeks passed. News spread that NextCore was gone. Every trace of its system wiped clean. Governments called it a cyber miracle. Others called it a mystery. But I didn't care what they called it. I rented a small office in Cambridge, painted it white. No logos, no fancy furniture, just peace. One day, a young woman knocked on the door holding a resume. Are you hiring? She asked nervously. I smiled. Maybe. Tell me what you love doing. I like building things, she said shyly. I'm not great at it yet, but I'm learning. I nodded. Then you'll fit right in. Months went by. I built a small team, honest, curious, hardworking people. We called the company Clearline Technologies. No secrets, no hidden codes, just simple tools to make people's lives easier. Sometimes the younger engineers asked about NextCore, about what really happened. I always smiled and said it was a lesson about trust, power, and knowing when to walk away. At night, I'd sit by the window, watching the city lights flicker across the skyline. And though the world had changed, I felt lighter, free. I had finally learned that peace isn't found in power, it's found in letting go. One evening, as I was closing the office, an email popped up on my screen. No sender, no subject, just a single line. Well done, Mrs. Hill. AR. I frowned. AR? Then I remembered. Agent Reed. A faint smile crossed my lips. Maybe some stories never truly end. They just fade quietly into the background, like code waiting for the next command. That night, I recorded a message for my team and maybe for whoever might one day hear my story. If you're watching this, I said softly, remember that no matter how much the world tries to silence you, your work has meaning. Your truth has power. Never let anyone write your story for you. Write it yourself, one line at a time. I closed the laptop and looked out the window. The city was alive again. I whispered, "Goodnight, NextCore, and thank you for everything." If this story touched your heart, take a moment to tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave helps more people find stories like this one. And if you believe justice always finds its way back, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories every day.